Hey, how's it going, everybody? And in today's video, we're going to take a look at how we can deploy our backend using just the EC2 instance. I have a few requests on the channel to showcase this. How would you deploy your application, your backend, by just using EC2 and going through all the manual process? So for those of you who are looking for seamless deployment process, I have a video on the channel called Elastic Beanstalk Deployment. And there we have used Elastic Beanstalk, which is a suite of multiple features combined together for you, so you don't have to do anything manually except like few settings. We also use load balancer, auto scaling group, and uh, we also covered the topic of transferring DNS configuration to Route 53, how to use certificate manager and issue the certificate, which we can then attach to load balancer and use that for SSL connection for our backend. So lots of concepts covered in that video. So if you don't understand something throughout this video, make sure you watch that one first. All right, today we're going to do everything manually. We're going to deploy our instance, and we're going to use Ubuntu, systemd, Nginx, and certificate bot for our SSL. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and start. I'm not gonna throw load balancer or auto scaling in this video. I'm gonna make separate video directly for load balancer and auto scaling, and also I will make a separate video for PM2. Um, the reason why we want to use PM2 is mostly for clustering, and that's why we don't really want to use systemd. If you have only one core, it's good. You can just go ahead and proceed with systemd, but PM2 has a clustering feature built in. And for those of you who's not aware, well, Node.js is single-threaded, and even if you have 10 core CPU, you're not going to benefit of that, because if you're running your application only on one core, well, that's what you get, right? There's no reason for you to get 10 core instance. And the PM2 will make sure that we're running our Node.js across all the cores, or at least across the cores that you have specified in your PM2 configuration. And that will be a separate video, because, like, this one is going to be pretty long, about an hour, I think. Um, so therefore, I don't want to kind of take some time. Like, otherwise, if we have thrown everything in here in this video, it will be like 2 hour long. Anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. So in order for us to deploy our EC2, well, first of all, you click on the EC2. If you don't have that there, then just type EC2, click star, it will drop it here. Then you can rearrange that the way you like it. Click on that, go to launch instance. Here, just give it a name. Best to do app EC2. For me, this is just the name of the instance. It's not the name of your application. We're going to pick Ubuntu. These settings are staying as default. T2 micro as our instance. This one is free tier eligible. Don't get confused if you don't have free tier available, because that has been like more than a year for you. You're out of free tier. You're not going to get this instance for free, obviously. And the pricing is listed down here depending on the system that you use. Windows, Linux, so it's going to be 0.01. So that's 1 cent per USD per hour for this particular instance. If you want different instance, well, by all means, go ahead and pick that. But first of all, it's not free tier eligible, and second, it's going to obviously cost you more money. We're going to pick this one. We're going to have one virtual CPU, 1 gig of memory. So since we have only one CPU, there's no need for us to set up PM2 and clustering, because we only have one CPU. All right, for the key pair, we're going to use test RSA. This is what I have. I mean, you will not have anything unless you have set up this in the past. There's also an option here for not to set up the key pair, which is, again, not recommended by AWS, and it's not recommended by me as well, because we're going to use this RSA or PEM file to connect to our instance. If you don't have that, simply just click create, give it a name, whatever to do app or whatever you want, right? RSA, PEM, then hit create. It will download the file. Make sure you remember the location of that file on your computer if you relocated it from your downloads folder, because mine is still in downloads. And we're going to refer to that file later. Okay, and then that file is going to be available for you in this list. You pick that, network configuration, allow SSH traffic. I'm going to allow it from anywhere. Ideally, you would click this, it will expand, and you'll have your current IP address listed in that drop-down menu. You want to select your IP address, so nobody else but you can connect to this. We will also go to the settings later, and I'll show you where you can modify this, where you can add different IP addresses, like you can add yours, your friend, your colleague, or whoever you want to add that to. Okay, so we're going to allow HTTPS, allow HTTP, For configuration storage, we're going to pick we're going to leave it as default. For those of you who are planning to run pretty heavy application on this micro instance or even nano instance because you don't want to pay too much money, maybe your application is only consuming 100 megabytes of memory when it's running, but during the build process, it may consume a lot more, and you may run out of physical like RAM memory. And one solution to overcome that problem is basically grab the instance with more gigabytes of memory. But what if you want to keep the instance that's free tier eligible? You don't want to pay money. So how do you go about that without having to upgrade your physical instance, right, and get more memory that way? Well, I have a cheat sheet also put together here, which I'm going to link in the description to this video, so you can refer to this cheat sheet. This is what I'm going to use to to walk you through this tutorial, so you can then refer to this cheat sheet as well and follow me. All right. And that's the enum error. That's the error I'm talking right now about. When your computer runs out of memory, one way is to upgrade your physical RAM, but another way, without having to upgrade your instance, is to create a swap file. Swap file, same as on your Windows. You just you give it a certain amount of gigabytes that you want, 2, 4, or whatever, like 10. But make sure that your disk space allows for that, right? Because swap file is using disk space. If you're planning on having 10 gigabytes of swap file, then, well, probably you gotta pick at least 12 or 13 gigabyte of disk space, because your operating system is going to eat up as well, like, I don't know, a gig and a half or 2 gigs. So make sure you have at least a couple gigs to spare. All right, mine is going to be 8 gigs because I'm not going to use this swap file anyway. But even if I would, then 4 gig swap file is more than enough for any application, I think, to run through the build state. And this is how you delete that swap file. So everything in this cheat sheet, okay? You're going to have that available for yourself. All right, so 8 gigs it is for us. Let me just close that. And for the advanced settings, well, I'm not going to pick anything for you. If you want to go ahead and look through this and you find something that you want to modify, go ahead and do so. I'm not going to, but example would be like termination protection. If you don't want your instance to be accidentally terminated, well, just go ahead and enable this termination protection. Same for stop. If you don't want your instance to be accidentally stopped, enable this. So I'm not going to pick anything. I'll just hit launch instance. All right, this process is going to take about a minute or two, so just be patient. You can go back to let's go back to the instances for now. Right now I have 2 instances in here. That's the one that's pending is the one we just created. This one is from the past. It's terminated. It's not used, so disregard this one. That's the one we're waiting for. Okay, if you click on the EC2 instance again and you click on this instance running, so this is kind of a shortcut for you to kind of get this filter set up. Instance state equals running. So we don't see anything because our instance is not yet running, but it will be soon. So if we delete this wildcard here, oh, it's already running. So let's try that one more time. Instance running. Now we should see the instance there. Okay, like that. If we remove that, it will show us all the instances. There's also this quick filter. You can filter by the state of the machine, right? Running, terminated, and so on and so forth. This is a little bit more sophisticated. You can pick whatever filter you want and kind of give it a certain value. So you filter through many of the instances if you have. All right. This is the instance type, T2 micro, that we selected. This is the public IP for our instance. And if you select that instance from here, then you will also have that there. You can visit your instance, but basically what's that going to do is just enter your IP address for the instance over here. Make sure it's not HTTPS, it's HTTP, but we're not going to be able to see anything at this moment because we don't have anything set up, right? So let's go ahead and connect to our instance through SSH. Select the instance, hit connect, go here. There are 2 methods we're going to use. Well, we're going to use only one, but I'm going to show you this one as well. Since we set up this wildcard, we have allowed connection from anywhere. So you don't need to modify any of these. You just hit connect. It will open up the other tab in your browser, and this console is going to be there. As soon as it connects, we're going to be able to see the information about our virtual machine that we have set up. So there are a few things listed out here for you. System load, usage of your disk space. You see we selected 8 gigs, but we only have 671 available. We have used 23% memory usage and so on and so forth. So that's not interesting. Let's clear this out. Actually, let's close this because we're not going to be using that browser thing. I just showed that to you because I want you to understand that option is also available. Let's click connect, click SSH client. These are the optional steps over here. You can set up specific CH mode on your PEM file in your system. So to give it a little bit more security, we don't care about that. Let me open up my git bash. I'm going to use git bash for SSHing. All right, I have my git bash over here. Let me just make it a little bit bigger and zoom in inside of it as well. All right, this is where we're going to spend majority of our time configuring our system. So remember where you put that PEM file that you have downloaded. Mine is still in downloads folder. I haven't moved it anywhere, so that's why I'm going into this downloads. Let's click on this example. This example has pre-populated this PEM file name for us. All you have to do, and just to make sure that you're in the right location for that file. So this is going to SSH us into this machine. This is the user Ubuntu, and this is the address of the machine. Let's hit enter. So it's just going to ask for your consent that, hey, you're connecting to something that we don't know, but click yes, because you probably know where you're connecting, right? So we see the same information that we saw there earlier, the system load, the amount of disk space, memory usage, and so on and so forth. Let's clear this out. So now, logical step would be to kind of upgrade everything that we have on our Ubuntu system. So make sure our operating system is up to date. We're going to run sudo apt update. So that will make sure everything is up to date on our system. And after this command, we're going to run the sudo apt upgrade. And what those all commands mean that we're going to use throughout this video, well, you can go ahead and Google that. Probably that will give you a better explanation if you're really curious about that. Let's give it our consent. Why? And so that will make sure that our operating system is in the latest state with latest updates and upgrades. So next one is going to be for us, since I want to use Node 20, I believe this version of Ubuntu comes with Node version 18. I want to use Node 20. So we're going to need curl command. If you have it, you have it. If you don't, just type curl and see what message it gives you. If it's something like this, then it means curl installed. And if it says something curl is not recognized, then you need to install curl, right? That's the command right there, sudo apt install curl if you don't have it. But for us, I do have it installed, so I don't care about that. What I do care is this next command, where we're going to list this Node 20 version to list of repositories for our operating system. The way you install stuff on Ubuntu is a little bit different. You can Google like how this whole thing works, but essentially we need to list what we want to install first in our operating system repository before we even install that. So let's list that. It will make sure it downloads it and kind of have it available for us. And all we have to do after that is just to install our node, and it actually gives you this shortcut here, or not shortcut, but kind of it tells you how to install that, right? Apt get install node.js-y. All right. Why is this doing this? Every time I highlight something in here like that, it just copies it right away. I don't know what is that all about. Anyway, let me just copy it one more time from the cheat sheet. Sudo apt install node.js-y. That will make sure we have node install of version 20 installed on our machine. And that will conclude our setup for the Ubuntu system here. Now we're going to do node-v in order to make sure that we have that set up. npm-v, we have npm, git-v. So that's all we need, those three packages. If you don't have anything like npm or git, make sure you just run that command, sudo apt install npm, sudo apt install git. So make sure all three of those available. All right. So next step is to clone our repository to our computer. So we are, if we do pwd, located in home directory /Ubuntu. So that's where we are in relation to our location in our file system. We go to our repository, AWS backend. We select the branch that we want to clone, then hit code, HTTPS, copy the link, open up your terminal again, do git clone, enter that command in there. That will make sure we're going to clone everything into this folder, AWS backend. And since my repo is public, it's not asking me for username and password for my GitHub. If yours is private, then most likely will prompt you to enter that information, user name for GitHub and password for GitHub. All right, so now what that has done for us is if we do ls, that has created a folder, AWS Hosting Backend, which we're going to cd into, type 2 letters, hit tab, it will auto-populate it for you so you don't have to type it out yourself. And now if we do ls inside of that folder, you're going to see that this is what we have. And essentially that mirrors what we have inside of our repo over here, right? So the blue ones are folders, white ones are files. And you may ask, like, well, I don't see NV and I don't see .git. Well, that's because those are hidden by default, and in order for us to see them, we need to specify -a flag on the ls command here. So those are right there, git and env. All right, so next step is to do npm install. So make sure our packages are installed. So we have node modules. All right, and after that, same as everywhere, npm start. And this one is going to error out for us. Well, first thing is, because we haven't listed since I'm using MongoDB, we haven't listed our IP address for our machine to connect to the Mongo. And the second is my connection string inside of GitHub for the env file here for Mongo URI is not correct. So I need to modify that as well. So the way we do that, we go back to EC2 instances here, click on this instances running, grab the IP address for the instance you want to whitelist, IPv4, public IPv4. Go here, add IP, Control C, give it a name, confirm. And now I want to also grab the connection string because mine is outdated there. Drivers, pick this one. And now you can also explore these errors here. Well, what it's saying here is that it cannot connect to MongoDB because your IP address is not whitelisted. And that's what we have taken care of. Let's kill the process, Control C, clear out everything. Let me just copy this string one more time. And now what we need to do is just paste that string that I have copied. And we're going to do that by sudo nano. It's sort of a notepad for Ubuntu. You can also use Vim. This is another alternative. I don't like it, so I'm going to use nano. And then we're just going to go ahead and type the name of the file that we want to modify. We enter here. We have this connection string. Let's remove that. Let's paste what I have copied. And then don't forget to modify your password in here because this is a fresh one, right, for Mongo. Admin, hit Control S to save it, Control X to exit. This is how you interact with these commands over here, right? That's why I also like Vim. It kind of gives you these shortcuts. So on Windows, at least, Control and then the whatever is listed here, Control W, Control O, Control R, and so on. So Control X to exit. Let's do npm start one more time. And if everything is correct, then we should see this Mongo connected. So we're running on port 5050. If we go back to our website here, we're not going to see anything still because, first of all, we don't have Nginx set up. That's why we're not going to see anything on the root domain. But even if we specify the port, which is 5050, according to what we have here, right, we're supposed to have application on port 5050, but we're not going to see anything either. And the reason is that if we go back to EC2, we click security, we select the security group, we go over here, edit inbound rules. We don't have the port 5050 available. We only have HTTPS and HTTP, which are not reachable because we don't have Nginx. So therefore, in order for us to test our application, we're going to click add rule, custom TCP, port 5050, or whatever that port is for you. And then we're going to whitelist all of the IP addresses. If you don't want to allow access from anywhere, then just list your own IP in there. Save rules. That should take effect right away. If we go back and refresh this thing, there we go, cannot get. If we go ahead and use the route that we actually have in our application, that should give us the list of these to-dos coming from MongoDB. So that's how you run the application. Now, the next logical step would be for us to get rid of this 5050 so we can at least visit this on this IP address. And the step after that would be to apply our domain name so we don't have to specify this IP address. We can have something .com or whatever. So let's go ahead and do that. But before we jump right into that, I want to mention one thing. So right now, our application is running. But if I close this window and I SSH out of the machine, our application is going to die because there is no processes running. So, well, right now, we do have a process, but if we SSH out or if we close the connection, this process is going to be killed. So let me demonstrate that by not actually closing the window, but we will be booted out from the SSH anyway. You'll be able to see that. Also, another problem with this whole setup so far is that if we restart our instance or reboot our computer physically, clicking this, our application is not going to be picked up after restart, but this is what we want, right? We want to preserve that application so it's running at all times without our intervention. So there we go. The system will reboot now. The connection to the remote host is closed, and we kind of booted out of the system. So let me bring up the last command for the SSH. We're going to wait, because even if we try to SSH right now, it will just give us an error. Also, if we go back to the website and try to refresh this website, since our system is restarting, as you can see, it's spinning, so it's not available. And even after the restart, it will not be available because we don't have our application listed as a service in the system. So there's nothing running our application for us. So we would have to manually, physically, to log in, SSH in, and then run our application. So you can see SSH connect to host, blah, 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 connection timeout. That's because our system was restarting. So now nothing is happening. Obviously, our application is not running. Let's SSH back in. I think right now we should be able to. There we go. Our system restarted. Well, we are all good. Let's cd into our backend folder. Let's do npm start. And this is unfortunately right now how we're supposed to do it, right? We have to physically log in, start our application, and that's how we see it running again. So next thing, we'll take care of that. Here, if you decide to use PM2, we'll go ahead and use that, install the PM2 and run your application using PM2. I'm going to show you systemd approach, sort of manual approach so far, and then in a separate video on my channel, I will make after this one about systemd. Well, we go into a little bit more details about systemd approach, which again, systemd is using, or sorry, PM2 is using systemd under the hood anyway. So inside of this cheat sheet, what I have for the first step about systemd is optional. You would create a separate env file for your service, because we're going to create service for the systemd, and some people like to have different envs for services. And the next two commands here underneath this one is basically just setting up the chmod 600 on that file that you create. And this last one will make sure that only this user from this machine will have access to this file, read and write. So if you get hacked, this is how you make sure that nobody has access to that. All right, so this is optional again, first step. If you don't want to create an extra env file, if you do want to, then make sure whatever you have inside of your current env for your application will be available inside of that file that you create, because we're going to reference that file in step number 2 here. If you decide not to create a file, but you still want to apply the chmod or the chown, we can still use that for your file that you have inside of your application, because we are going to use this .env file that comes with our application. And again, if I just copy those without creating an extra file, and I copy those, I can still set up chmod on my current env, right? And I can still set up chown on my current env, just like on the new one, if you decide to create a new one. All right, so now our file is protected. Nobody can have access to that except us. Perfect. So let's move on to the step number 2. If you do want to create a separate env, by all means, go ahead and create that. So step number 2, all we need to do is just create a new service inside of our directory here. This path is critical. Make sure it's /etc systemd system. The name of your service is optional, however, but you want to keep this somewhat meaningful, because if you're going to have multiple services, you want to distinguish one from another. So mine is going to be to do app.service. So let's create that, and keep in mind that we are using nano, so meaning that we're not only going to create this file, but we're also going to edit it right away. So then I'm going to copy this from define service section here in my cheat sheet and paste it there. The only 2 things we need to make sure that we, 3 things actually. This user has to be well, by default it's Ubuntu. If you have set up different user, make sure you modify it here. Working directory where our application is located, and environment file location. So here, if you create a different environment variable, this is where you would specify a different path to that environment that you have created. All right, so we're gonna just modify real quick this application name, just in case, to do app. User is Ubuntu. Working directory for us is Ubuntu AWS hosting backend, whatever that is for you. Just make sure you type the right name. And script is npm start. We start always, no env production. And this is the location of our env file. Since we are using the one that's in our application here, I'm just going to copy that and we'll paste it here. .env. Make sure you specify the file, the actual file, right? And that's pretty much it. The system logs are staying the same. That's all the same. Control S to save it, Control X to exit it. Let's clear it all out. And now what we need to do is to reload our system daemon. Let's grab the command from the cheat sheet. So this will make sure that our system picks up the file that we just created, this to-do app.service. Right now, our system is not aware that that file exists. So this will take care of that. Our system now is aware of that file. And what we need to do with next two commands is to, first of all, enable this file that we have created, to do app.service. That's enabled. Now let me bring that back. We're going to erase enable and we're going to type in start. So enabling and then starting. And the same way, if you want to stop this service, because let's say later you decide to use PM2 and you want to get rid of this stuff over here, you will do everything in reverse, right? You're going to stop the service first, then you're going to disable the service. And commands are the same, right? Stop and disable. So that will make sure that your service is disabled and it's not picked up by the system after each restart. All right, but for now, we're just going to go with start, right? If you do see error after this command, we'll make sure in that case that you have specified everything properly in this file, right? So make sure your directory is correct. Make sure your environment variable file location is correct. If you had make sure and everything is fine in this file, then make sure your env is correct, because what next is going to happen, it will try to run your application, and if your env is not correct and you have MongoDB error, that will trigger the error during this command as well, system start. All right, so our service is running. Let's do service to do app status just to see that everything is correct. And this is what you want to see. Everything's green. If you see any reds, obviously that your service is not working properly. So this is what has happened here. We have npm start and node index.js, node mon index.js. More on that in a second. And these are the logs for our application, right? Mongo connected, server is running on port 5050, and we don't even have to do anything ourselves, right? We don't have to type npm start because that service has done this for us already. So let's go ahead and refresh this. All we should see is that our application is running. Now, since we have added that service and we have enabled it, if we reboot our system at this point, that will also kick us out from this SSH as well. Now, if we go and we refresh this server, we're not going to see the result, obviously, because our physical machine is restarting. But as soon as that machine is back to life, it will make sure that the service that we have created, to do app.service, will be ran by the operating system. And this website will be available again. Except now we don't have to do anything, right? We're not even SSH right now. We're just hanging around here. Let's actually bring the last command so we are ready to SSH. Let's wait. Let's give it a restart one more time. Ubuntu is pretty fast. Should be like, I don't know, 20, 30 seconds to restart. Well, it's not yet live. Okay, let's give it another couple of seconds. You see it's querying itself. It's trying to restart. Should be live pretty soon. Usually it takes about 20 to 30 seconds. I don't know. This one is actually taking the longest. Usually it's like 30 seconds, but it should be live soon. All right, maybe there is some, error restarting our machine or whatever. I don't know why is it taking so long. Usually it should be live by now. Let's try to SSH and see what's going on. Oh, there we go. As soon as we started SSHing, it kind of came back to life. Sometimes it takes like 20 seconds. Sometimes it can take a minute, as you saw there. But again, despite us having to SSH in here, we can actually close this connection by exiting it, right? And now we're not SSH'd, but our application is still working because that service is running inside of operating system. All right, every time we restart, that also takes care of that. All right, let's go back SSH into our machine. That's at least one good news for us, right? We were able to kind of achieve some sort of success so far. Hey, this is me coming from the future. I've already recorded the video. We have set up everything. So everything went well. However, I just forgot to mention one thing. I told you about NodeMon and I forgot that I have not shown you that what it was doing. So right now inside of our to-do app service, we have NodeMon running our index.js. And for those of you who know what NodeMon is, it's just basically development tool that helps us every time we make a change in our file, it will restart our server for us. It's a development tool, not necessarily needed in production. And let me demonstrate real quick what I mean by that. So we're going to use Nano and we're going to modify index.js file. This is our entry file for our application. And let's say I'm going to add a GET request to our current application. And it's going to be, let's say, on the /test route and request response. And some of you may have guessed already what's going to happen. Then we do res.status. So let's say it's 200, and we're going to send some message to the user. Let's say test, test, test. All right, we're going to save, Control S. We're going to exit out. And now, since we have NodeMon running our application, we are going to be able to see that change right away on our app online, right? So if I specify that endpoint there, /test, hit it, we got those test, test, test. All right, this is, if that's desired behavior, just leave it there. If you don't want it, well, obviously, it kind of useless during the production. So for that, you would have to go back to your package.json files, sudo nano package.json, and you want to modify your start script, right? Instead of node1, it's going to be node, Control S, Control X. So now we need to restart our service, not server, sudo systemctl restart to do app.service. And now it's going to run through that script and will run node.index.js. If we take a look at the status, you will see that the status is reflecting this. Instead of nodemon, we're now running our script with node. And let's go ahead also remove what we have wrote in our index.js. We're going to remove this endpoint. Control S, Control X. And now you will see that since it's no longer nodemon running our application, this test endpoint is still there and still producing the result that we have in there, despite the fact that we removed it. But since, again, there's no nodemon, nothing is restarting our application, and we need to physically restart it in order for that change to take effect. All right, so we just did it. Let's refresh, and that's how we get rid of that. Okay, make sure you're running your application using Node and not nodemon. All right, back to the video where we're going to set up everything else to look like this. All right, so next logical step again would be to get rid of this port 5050, and after that we will get rid of this IP address. So for that, we're gonna install our Nginx. Right now, if we, let me copy and paste this command. Right now, if we visit this domain, just IP address, right, without anything else in it, we're not going to see anything because we don't have any server running on that root domain. But as soon as we install Nginx, which is this command is going to take care of, sudo apt get install Nginx or Nginx, whatever you prefer. I heard some people saying it differently, Nginx. All right, so this is yet another server, and now what we need to do is make sure that our service is running, and same as for our custom service, all we have to do is just type in service Nginx status. All right, everything's green, meaning our Nginx is running and it's good to go. All right, let's refresh this. Root domain, again, without having to specify anything, and we have now Nginx in here. Perfect, so that's a step in the right direction. So next thing we want to do is modify the Nginx configuration file. That's in the cheat sheet there. Sudo nano, again, nano is our kind of notepad, right? So we're going to modify this default file. Let's hit enter. And this is what we have inside of this file. So we want to grab this server and we want to delete whatever is in here. It's up to you. You can modify this, but it's going to take you more time modifying it. I'm just going to Control K, cut it out after I highlight everything. And then I'm just going to grab whatever is in the cheat sheet in here and I'm going to shift, oh, come on, shift insert. So this is what essentially you want to end up with. You can either keep whatever that was in there before in the server and just modify it to look like this, or you just delete everything and copy paste what I have in the cheat sheet. So we're going to listen port 80 and we're going to, this is server name is whatever at this point, but location is critical. This is what we need to have: proxy pass and relocate us to localhost 5050. So what essentially is going to happen here is that every time we hit this server, it will make sure that we are redirected to this localhost 5050. All right, so let's hit save, Control S, and make sure you have this file copied correctly, because sometimes you may not have this curly bracket in, and that's what's going to trigger the error. All right, Control S, Control X to exit, and now we need to sudo system ctl restart Nginx. All right, I have an error in there. System ctl restart Nginx. So that will take care of our configuration being picked up again by the Nginx. So if you do see error at this point, that's what I referred in that file. Make sure that everything you have in this file is making sense. Otherwise, if we, let's say, remove one curly bracket here, it will just trigger error. Or if you, instead of proxy, you made a typo here, you add some letters, so that's going to trigger an error during the Nginx restart. So make sure whatever you have here is making sense and that you don't have any errors after Nginx restart. All right, so that should be it. And now if we refresh this, we should see this cannot get, which is a desired result. Because if we go to something that do make sense, something that does exist in our app, we should see the list of to-dos. That's how we got rid of our 5050 there. And next thing would be to specify the port, okay? So, or not port, I mean, replace this IP address with our domain. So let's Control C, copy this, go back to Route 53. Again, more on Route 53 and hosted zones, how to transfer your domain name to Route 53 is in Elastic Beanstalk video. Make sure you watch that so you will understand how this whole thing works. All right, so we're going to go ahead here and we're going to create a new record. We're going to now specify the subdomain. So whatever you want, I'll do EC2 to do app. Okay. And then I'm just going to paste the value for our server. Obviously, make sure that there is no HTTP, just the server IP address. It's going to be a record, and that's it. We're going to create record. Make sure that whatever, if you're not using Route 53, make sure that your provider, GoDaddy or Namecheap or whatever you use, is allowing you to enter IP address as an a record, because sometimes I've seen on certain providers they are not allowing that. All right, create record. If your provider is not allowing that, transfer DNS to Route 53 and you should have no problem. So now it's going to apply those settings and it's going to take about 60 seconds, but usually it's available right away. Let's copy this address that we have just added there. So EC2 to do app dot best to do app abs.site. I know it doesn't make sense, but it's just for testing purposes, right? So let's grab this and enter it in here. Make sure it's also HTTP, right? Not HTTPS. And what essentially is going to happen is we're just supposed to see the same result here. And there we go. We have the same list of to-dos. Instead of now having to specify that IP address, we just added our domain name here. So the last step that we have to go through is to issue our SSL certificate. So for that, we're going to use Certbot. So if you have your certificate files as a physical files, you purchase your certificate and you've been issued those .pem files, and you want to apply those manually, because the next process, what I'm going to show you is going to issue certificate for free, so you don't have to purchase anything. But if you had purchased it in the past and you do have those files physically, we will cover that after I show how you install this automatically. So over here in the cheat sheet, I have this section here about get SSL certificate using Certbot. There is official documentation, and that's in relation to these commands over here. There are different ways to install this Certbot depending on what you're using. If you're using Apache, then you, instead of Nginx over here, for instance, you're going to use Apache, right? but for us, it's going to be Nginx. So yeah, there are multiple ways of installing it. Even if you install for Nginx, there are different packages used to install it. So go ahead, give it a read. This is just a summary of me reading through that and kind of making sure that everything's working. So these commands are kind of mandatory. I'm not going to explain each and every one of these. You go ahead and read the documentation if you're really interested, but I have this little summary over here for you. And this one is documentation regarding this cron job that we're going to run, because Certbot certificate, SSL certificate, is only valid for 90 days. This cron job will make sure that every 90 days we're going to run this Certbot renew command over here, and it will renew everything automatically for us. So we don't have to log in and do it manually. But by all means, if for whatever reason you don't want to do this, you want to do it still manually, well, every 90 days or so, log in, run this Certbot renew -q, and that's going to take care of your renewal certificate. All right, perfect. So let's go ahead and do that. And after we go through this automatic SSL application, I'm going to show you how to do this if you have physical files, right? Because this certificate bot will help us to kind of understand that process. All right, let's install whatever I have for the installation in there. Let's hit Y. And the second command, setting up the virtual environment. Okay, let's hit enter there. All right, next command. This one is to set up the Nginx Certbot. This one to create system link. Let's wait. All right, this one to create system link. And the last command is to issue our certificate. So now this sudo certbot nginx-d example.com. So here you would specify your address. Let me just remove whatever is in there. And then we're going to copy what we just created in Route 53. Again, it's not your route home domain, right? best2do-app-bs.site. It's whatever we created, including this subdomain. So it's EC2 to do app dot and whatever is after that as well. So that's what we have to insert here. Again, we don't need this HTTP. Just make sure you don't have those in there. And that's pretty much it. If you have a 3W domain for which you also want to have certificate, you just chain on another -d and 3W, and you just input your website name using that 3W, and that will make sure it will apply certificates to both of those domain names. Okay, so for us, it's just going to be this one, -d ec2.todoapp.biz, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. Let's hit enter. So that will prompt us to enter the email address. Enter your valid email address if you want to receive notifications regarding your SSL renewals. Since we're going to apply a cron job and this is a pet project, I don't care. I'll enter that. This is just to make sure that you read the documentation and terms of service. And the next one, you can say no. This is some participation, right? And that will requesting certificate for this domain, right? And that's what you want to see. Successfully received certificate for this domain. And also you can see the path where it has put those physical files for you inside of your operating system here. Okay, so if you, for whatever reason, need these files, well, this is where they are located in here. Okay, so that has been successfully applied for us. And also what at this point has happened, let's actually do this cron job first before I went to explaining everything else. So you just copy that cron job command, hit enter, and in order for you to make sure that that has applied, which is going to go to this nano etc cron tab, and this is where you will see that this last line over here, it has been added, and certbot renew -q will run every time it needs to run in order to renew your certificate. Okay, after this, we want to restart our Nginx. Sudo systemctl restart Nginx. If you have a valid configuration, you should not see any errors. Again, if you want, for whatever reason, check the status, then you just do service Nginx status. It should be all green like this. If you have any errors, well, that's most likely regarding to this file over here. Let me just copy that section, that command as well. Don't want to type it. All right, let me remove this. So that's actually, let's do this sudo nano. So this file, we have been to this file in the past, right? This is where we enter our server configuration. Now, what this certificate bot has done for us, if you scroll down, you will see that this certificate bot has automatically modified our Nginx configuration, and it entered these values here for our 443 SSL, right? So right now, after restarting Nginx, if we visit our domain on the HTTPS, we should see our website working over the HTTPS, and we have our connection secure over here. All right, perfect. That's working, and this is why it's working, right? Because it copied all those certificates that it issued for us, and it applied those settings to Nginx. So now, to answer the question, how do you do this manually? If you don't want to request those free certificates, and you want to still have your own certificates applied to the Nginx configuration, well, put two and two together. This is what Certbot created for you. Um, Realistically, all you need to do is just modify the path for your SSL certificate here and SSL certificate key. So you copy your physical files to whatever location you want on your computer, right? etc. It could be something like, I don't know, etc/SSL. You create that, and then you put like whatever you have .pem in here, and make sure that when you specify this, you also replace this command over here for your for whatever your path is. So since this has been created by this certbot, I think you don't need all of this, especially this include, this diaphragm. So you can probably remove those. The minimum configuration I think you need is you don't even need this server at the bottom probably. You can keep it there, try to see what's going to happen. If it's going to fail, just remove it. If it will not fail, then just leave it there. So I think the minimum configuration for your own implementation would be this. So you want to have a server name pointing to your domain. Then the location is critical, or also should be proxy passed to localhost 5050. And then the rest of this, listen for 443 SSL, okay, and then SSL certificate here and SSL certificate key. Make sure you copy those files that you have to some location on this machine, and you specify the correct path to those files in here. Then again, you save this, restart your Nginx. If there's no errors, perfect. That's how you do it. All right, let me see if this is going to fail right now. It may fail because the configuration is not correct. Let's do sudo systemctl restart nginx. It didn't fail. Well, there you go. That answers your question probably, that you do not need all of those configurations. If I refresh over HTTPS, we still have the certificate valid, right? So that answers your question probably. If you have physical files on hand, how do you apply those to your Nginx in order to have SSL? Well, that's how. This is the bare minimum you need for this. Let me copy this and put this into that cheat sheet for you, so you don't have to type it yourself. So you can just then copy and paste, and then all you have to do at this point is just replace your server name again with the one that you purchased and you connect it to your Route 53, and then replace your SSL certificate file location. But before that, you obviously need to copy those files to your computer. And that's pretty much it. That concludes it all. I think we've went through kind of full circle. We have created a EC2 instance from bare minimum, and then we have applied all the stuff that we want to apply in order to have this over HTTPS with the domain name that we desire. So that kind of repeats what we had inside of our Elastic Beanstalk. And you see that Elastic Beanstalk does it all for you, but over here it involves a little bit more configuration. So now, I guess since we have this SSL as well in place, I guess I'll cut it here. And in the next videos, I'm going to cover the load balancer. How can we throw load balancer onto the instance that we have here? How can we apply auto scaling group to this same instance? And also we're going to cover the PM2 and the how to kind of what's its face? I already forget. Let me see. It's in the documentation. How to, is it here? How to make sure that we're running Node.js application on all of the cores. I don't remember the name. Not sharding. Sharding is for database, but clustering. Okay, to make sure that we cluster. And you see, this is kind of the diagram. Um, you this is a good representation of what's happening, right? If you have 4-core CPU for your EC2 instance, in our case, it's not going to work because we only have 1 core. But if you happens to have 4 cores, this is your Node.js running in here, right? Using only 1 core. So what's the point of having 4 cores in that case? Well, you want your Node.js to be clustering and running on all of the cores, so you are taking advantage of all the cores that you have. So that's what we're going to cover in the PM2 section. All right, I think this is pretty much it. There are certain things inside of this cheat sheet that I'm going to provide for you. For instance, how to delete that certificate that we have just applied. Let's say you applied the load balancer, and now you want to use your certificate manager for your SSL certificate. So you want to delete that in Nginx configuration over here, right, that we have. Well, the first step would be, I guess, it's logical, right? You're going to grab this and you're going to remove it from your Nginx configuration. You're going to save this file, and that will make sure that your Nginx does not have that entry. And that's like the first step of removing this certificate. And then you probably want to remove everything else, like those physical files on your machine and stuff like that. But essentially, that's the only step pretty much to delete your SSL and make sure your Nginx doesn't, there's no clash between certificate manager and load balancer and this Nginx configuration. Anyway, all that information is going to be in the cheat sheet, so you can go ahead and give it a read. I'm just not covering all that because I have it in a written form for you. All right. Anyway, thanks for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye.